Welcome back to Squawk Box. East and Gulf Coast longshoremen now threatening to strike in just over a week, with talks to resolve the contract dispute expected now to resume tomorrow. Joining us right now to discuss potential supply chain impact is Carlos Gutierrez. He's the former Secretary of Commerce, also a CNBC contributor. I want to get his views on tariffs and everything else that's going on. But in the short term, we almost had a strike before with longshoremen. What do you think's really at stake here? And how quickly do you think this can get resolved?
Well, I think the longshoremen have won, and it's a matter of whether we need a strike to confirm that. We probably do. I don't think management can just, call it quits without a fight. But I don't see any big changes in technology or in the contract. There will be a delay. We can't expect a strike to happen on the eve of the inauguration. So, yes, there'll probably be a short strike, but in the end, I think the longshoremen have won this one, and we'll just move on,
Here's a larger question in the context of labor in this country. How do you view President-elect Trump and his relationship with labor and with unions as we move forward? I mean, are we going to see more of this, and will he be supportive of them or not? Because it's been very mixed over the years, and clearly there's been maybe even a little bit of a shift even the last 6 or 8 months during his campaign.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. On one hand, there is a link between the doctrine of America First and unions. You can make a case for that, but I don't think the president is making broad policy. I don't think he's saying that he will always side with labor versus technology. That's a very big statement. I think what he's saying is, in this specific case, he believes the longshoremen are right. It's interesting that the argument was probably made that the profits are going to foreign companies. And, foreign being the key word, it's really not about foreign companies. If U.S. companies were running these ports, were operating these ports, it would be the same thing. The money would be going to them. So the reason there are foreign companies, because there aren't U.S. companies who manage ports on this scale. It's a very difficult business, the business with a lot of expertise required, built over decades. So the foreign aspect isn't really the key issue. But this is an issue that's going to come back up. Is it, technology versus labor, and how do we deal with it without it being binary? It's either one or the other, or we go on strike. So it's something to watch, and I think it's important.
Carlos, I want to talk about tariffs with you and the role of inflation. There's a Washington Post piece out this morning talking about how the president is really going to implement tariffs across the board on what he's describing as critical national security items. The question, of course, is what's going to be considered within that construct, and how you think, A, that may impact inflation across the board, but also if you're a CEO of one of these big companies, and by the way, maybe you just need to donate to the inauguration, but what you're going to have to do to get off that list?
Well, look, I think that's an important point. There's a case to be made that the way to approach tariffs is surgically, by industry, by product, in some cases by company, whereas across the board we'll have consequences that are self-inflicting. There's self-inflicting damage, especially if we want to, for example, if we want to move supply chains to Mexico. It would be self-defeating if we put tariffs on products that are being moved to supply from Mexico. So I think that there has to be an analysis. It has to be a bit more strategic. I do think that it points toward specific strategic products, industries, companies, as opposed to across the board. There are too many things that fall through the cracks when you do across the board. Just on supply chains, these things are so complicated. It's so easy to say, let's bring supply chains home. You talked about Apple a little while ago. Their supply chain has come out of China. You're talking about hundreds of components coming from different countries that all congregate in China for assembly. That cannot be replaced overnight. In fact, it can't be replaced in years, in decades. So these things are going to take time and a lot of analysis, a lot of work. And if we want to facilitate that, then I think we need to be more selective about tariffs, especially in countries like Mexico, or Vietnam, where they will be recipients of supply chains.
Carlos, I want to thank